Joining us now is a man who has seen Hamas from the inside, knows its workings, knows its ideology, and has been known as the Green Prince, the son of Hamas. Mosab Hassan Yousef is joining us on Times Now for the very first time. My first question is, what was life inside Hamas like, and what made you leave it?
You know, Hamas, in short, is a barbaric Islamist organization that is using violence to achieve their political and religious agendas at the expense of many civilians, children, women, and elder. Hamas is a brutal organization that does not regard the human life. You know, what we saw from ISIS, very similar, but Hamas is much more dangerous. And I have been saying this for over 20 years, that we have a problem with Islamists. And if we don't stand united and fight this disease, uproot it completely, forever, they will continue coming back and terrorizing people in India, terrorizing people in the Middle East, in the United States. Everywhere they go, they spread disease. So we have to counter them. They are a disease. I don't want to go and expand on what Hamas is like from within, because it's darkness. And what we saw actually in their action, how do we define them? We define them by their action. And what we saw on October 7th defines Hamas.
So, you have described in detail in your book about, your growing up years, etc. Your father was one of the founding members of Hamas. But in 21st century world, one wonders, how does the Hamas get young men to join their ranks? After all, shouldn't everyone today be thinking of getting ahead in life, making money, even their PlayStations? How does Hamas indoctrinate young men to join them?
Because when we give them the freedom to roam in the world and do whatever they want, of course they can influence those who don't have the power of discernment to know what is true and what is false. So many fall victims to Hamas and other criminal and terrorist groups. So why we have responsibility to stop Hamas. And by countering their ideology, by destroying their infrastructure, by destroying their military capacity, by destroying their propaganda, by destroying their podium, the platforms they use, by standing united, that the world, the globe, entirely reject Hamas brutality, that this is not a way of life, that this is not acceptable, that some group want to dominate, annihilate an entire race, the Jewish race, in order to build their Islamic state. This is not acceptable. Earth, Mother Earth, does not belong only to a religion, does not belong only to a race, does not belong to the Nazis, and does not belong to Hamas or to the Islamists.
You're talking about a religious war, but a lot of people who are right now rallying for Palestine say, Hamas actually was responding to years of repression of the Palestinian people by the Israelis. They are actually resistance warriors. They are freedom fighters. What do you say to that?
They're just a bunch of clowns. They're sheep. And this type of people are living in denial. Hamas aggression is not only known through October 7th attack. Hamas has a long history of attacking civilians. Back in the 1990s, they killed and wounded thousands of civilians in Israel. In the 2000s, during the Second Palestinian Intifada, they killed and wounded thousands of civilians. They targeted synagogues, buses, markets, grocery stores, beach clubs, nightclubs, schools, even universities. This is what Hamas has, a very long history of targeting civilians. This is not a new thing, what happened on October 7th. So I don't understand why the world is living in denial. And by the way, I think my army in India, my army of warriors, those who are Shiva worshippers, those who understand Krishna and understand the Gita, understand the Upanishad, and understand the spiritual dimension of this war, need to actually gear up and show this minority in the West that Islamists are not acceptable in our globe. The way they represent themselves and the way they want to achieve their agendas through violence. So I call for all my armies in India. This is my greatest army in India, to rise up, not by the means of violence. I don't mean that they use violence against that, but to stand united and firm and tell the rest of the world that we don't accept any form of Islamists. Not Hamas, not ISIS, not Islamic Jihad, not Al-Qaeda. Islamists must die forever. This is it. This is the final war against Islamists, and we have to win this war. Israel is at this front, okay? Israel is at this front, and we should not leave them alone. We have to stand behind them. This is not about nationalism. Israel is fighting on our behalf. I am part of that fight, and it has been an honor. And I ask all my people in India to stand with us. We have to counter this disease. We have to uproot it.
What is the Hamas's real agenda?
Hamas belongs to Islam. And I don't want this to become an incitement against the Muslim people, because the Muslim people were born this way. And they are paralyzed. And they cannot fight for themselves. If they don't fight for their own freedom, I cannot fight on their behalf. You cannot fight on their behalf. Therefore, we will have to accept them as part of humanity. But when they start developing Islamists, political Islam, that has guns, that has rifles, and shooting people, we have to make it very clear. The moment they manifest their violence, we are going to counter their violence with force, and if necessary, with lethal force. You know, if they have Allah to their side, we have agony to our side.
There have been many terror attacks, across the world that we have seen, from the US to India to Somalia. But October 7th stood out for its sadistic and, if I may say, almost needless brutality. The kind of accounts that we've heard of rapes, murders, people incinerated, decapitation. What explains this hyper-escalation of violence?
This is what happens to us when we are separate from the divine, when we are separate from Brahman, when we are separate from the source, and we identify ourselves with some ideologies and some beliefs, all human delusion. And yes, by the name of freedom in the West, and everywhere, that we allowed dark entities to take over. And by the name of democracy and by the name of freedom, they became somehow a very strong voice that we need to counter. It doesn't matter if they are majority or not. We, the people of truth, we live truthfully and we go according to existence, and we belong to the source. Because I don't have a problem with the rest of the world. Indians have no problem. Hindus, they have no problem with the rest of the world. We coexist. Christians coexist. Jews coexist. So why only it's coming from the Islamists all the time, this violence? Of course, there are extremists everywhere, but we see it on a much bigger scale coming from Islamists. And we have to say it clearly and loudly that this is rejected. I rejected myself. I had to die. For this cause, for this problem. I was shunned by my family, as was shunned by my culture, by everything, only to say no violence, no to violence and no to bloodshed, no to suicide bombing attacks. My entire nation shunned me. They demonized me. They made me into Satan. This is what they do to everybody who resists this disease. Therefore, this is now the moment of truth. And I know both sides. And on this authority, I say, we have to stand united. In India, in the United States, in Europe, we have to stand behind Israel. We have to win this fight and eradicate this barbaric terrorist organization called Hamas, or any Islamist movement.